Well, we hit 1,000 subscribers again, so that's pretty cool, right? Guys, every day can be a day in your war campaign. Every great man is a conqueror at heart. When Alexander the Great was a young kid, something he said that was one of his biggest sort of fears was that his father, who was also a conqueror, would leave him no kingdoms left to conquer. And when I think about it, the more great men I read about are all conquerors of sorts. You know, back in the day, you would have like these people like Alexander the Great or Genghis Khan or whoever they'd kind of just want everything, right? It was just in their nature. And, you know, oftentimes it was battle and bloodshed and direct, violent confrontation that was their method of achieving what they wanted. But as time has progressed, we've moved on to more of a sort of a civilized way of being, you could say, a conqueror, right? It's easy to think that this notion of conquering has gone away, but it's not. It's simply shifted more to other methods, primary of which are like business and control and influence, right? You know, we can take somebody like Elon Musk, for example, right, who is currently the world's richest man and probably one of the most influential people in the world, maybe like top 3, top 5 or something like that, right? You know, I know some people don't like Elon, and to set the record straight, I'm not one of those people. I like Elon. I think he's doing a lot of great things, and one of my key takeaways from the Walter Isaacson book, it's like his biography or autobiography or whatever, I'm not sure exactly the difference, but it's that book that came out a year or so ago about his life, is that he was very much influenced by war campaigns and strategy, right? He was always reading a lot of history and war history, and there's even a quote from him regarding this game that he got really addicted to called the Battle of Polytopia, which is like a strategy game where you kind of start from nothing and you build and you gather resources, right, to advance your civilization, where he said that the quote was his fascination with the game proves that he's built for war, right? Quotes, built for war. But the thing is that these days there's not really too many opportunities to be like a war campaigner in the traditional sense, in that direct way that like Napoleon or Alexander the Great did it, right? And so many men have kind of given up on that, not really realizing that there is still a war in front of you, and it's a very important one, and the war is to achieve agency over your own life and to increase your influence in the world, right? So hopefully this is making sense so far. I guess what I'm trying to say is it's something that is very liberating, right? It's that we still have, as men, the opportunity to wake up and treat each day as another day in a long-running war campaign, right? I'm inviting you to treat your life and your control over your own destiny as something of a war game, because in the context of war, you know, you'll likely be making the most mature, gratification delaying, best long-term decisions, right? I mean, you'd hope. Obviously, some people are better at it than others, but when you think of war and you think of the strategy that goes into war, it pays to be as tactical and as cunning and as smart as possible, right? So you're often seeing some very strategic decisions at play there in the context of war, right? I've just been really thinking lately, like there is a lot of liberation to that, and it's just kind of like admitting and framing your life this way, because when you think about it, when are you truly the happiest? It's probably not when you are engaging in all like these easy, instant gratification habits, like, you know, the prawn, the degenerate stuff, but you're probably the happiest when you bring yourself to be disciplined and when you do the difficult yet satisfying and productive activities, right? That long term are going to be the most productive and the most beneficial to your life, right? If you really look back and you think of like, what are some of my best days? It's probably not the days that you spent all day staring into a screen, accomplishing nothing, whacking off like 1,000 times, right? Until your like dick is like bleeding, right? Like nobody really looks back on those days with any sort of satisfaction or pride or anything, right? It's the days where you're doing the productive things that advance you forward. That's really where you have the most peace of mind. I think where you feel the least anxiety is when you're on that track, right? So it's funny because, you'll start to move strategically. And once you do that, you realize that short-term thinking, it's almost never the answer. And it's not the answer in a successful war waged, and it's not the answer in chess, and it's just not the answer in real life either. I think when nature kind of presents this sort of like obvious dynamic, like using strategy and leverage, it's important to listen. You see this dynamic played out over so many different things, right? Like in jiu-jitsu, a smaller, sort of more frail guy, as long as the discrepancy isn't so big, he can use like these principles of strategy and leverage and things like that to defeat a bigger opponent. Like it almost seems to be like a natural law that short-term emotional thinking, it leads to disaster, whereas long-term analysis and calculation and thoughtfulness, it leads more often to success, right? You can see this in like the form of education, right? Where if you take the time, and hopefully most of us have, where we've learned, like basic literacy, math, history, and, things like that, it gives you this advantage over someone that for whatever reason they haven't, they've been like raised by wolves somehow and they never learned how to speak. They never learned how to like interface with society. It gives you a huge advantage. And even like a one-on-one fight, even something, that simple, we could boil it down to that, assuming like the weight and, the physicality of the two people fighting, assuming it's somewhat on par, that's why there's weight classes and stuff, but like 9 times out of 10, it's going to be the more well-trained fighter that executes on his game plan with like the least amount of emotions, the most sort of sound planning, who's drilled the techniques the most, who's kind of put the most effort into like accumulating these tools in his tool bag. That's the guy who is going to come out on top. It all boils down to strategy and attrition and like this willingness to engage in the reality of what's in front of you in an intelligent, sometimes offensive, sometimes defensive, but like thoughtful way, right? So why do I say that this is liberating? Well, to be quite frank, I believe that this is simply, for many men, especially those of you who watch videos like this is the way that we actually want to live, that we don't know is the way we want to live. Because, to be frank, you are already having war waged on you. And I'll say this again for emphasis. You are already having a war waged on you. If you've been living with like your parents, or if you've somehow like inherited a large sum of money or something like that, it might not be as easy to see it. But I think that those of you out there who've been forced to kind of take care of yourself and to take life into your own hands, or to finally kind of like live like an adult, you know what I mean. Because life, as cliche as it sounds, it will either happen to you or you can happen to it. And if you choose to sit back and chill and make these like short-term, non-strategic decisions, you're actually going to see that life will come for you, kind of like an advancing army, and that you aren't quite ready to take it on because you've ill-prepared yourself, right? And what it's going to do is it's going to kick your ass, honestly, truly. It's going to kick your ass. And it might be fun for a little bit to like sit back and mooch off your parents, not take things seriously, but eventually time will go by, your parents are going to die, or they're going to finally be like, okay, you're like 30, we got to put you out on your own, like you got to figure it out. And you're going to realize how vulnerable you've allowed yourself to become if you haven't figured out like a way to like shore up this kind of fortress that is your life through smart planning or financial stability or education or whatever it is that gives you resources. You start to see just how quickly life can begin to kick your ass. And it's going to brutalize you because the bills, the obligations, the challenges, the emotional distress, it's all coming your way regardless of what position you've put yourself in. And it only gets more difficult the worse you are at playing the game right. Just to give like a simple example, you could take two people and one has built like a savings account and he's made connections and he's built up some good credit in the world in one way or another, right? And the other has just kind of isolated themselves and made bad short-term decisions and has no savings, no money, no business to generate income from, nothing like that, just taking one day at a time, just kind of letting life happen to him, right? So you have these two types of people, and say these people both at the same time they have some bad things happen to them, or we could say in the context of this warlike mindset, obstacles, right? They have obstacles that present themselves, like say they both have a important family member die, and then a rock just came out of nowhere and like cracked their car windshield, right? The person who was well fortified and prepared is much more likely to be able to handle these situations with relative ease, whereas the person who's just kind of been willy-nilly living, who's just been living willy-nilly, that person who is fortified is going to be much better able to take on some of the challenges that life presents, right? If they need to take time to mourn or whatever like that, they're going to have people to kind of talk to. They can take some time off because they have a savings. They can take their car in and almost immediately they can have this like issue fixed, and they can kind of get back to things in a timely way, versus like this person who hasn't fortified their life at all, where now like somebody they love has died or their window is cracked in their car now, just something like that, right? But they don't have much of a recourse of action they can take. It's kind of funny how that word recourse is so similar to like the word resource, right? It's like in order to mount an effective recourse, it seems like you need to have some resources, right? So the guy without the resources, when bad things happen, when obstacles happen, it's the difference between like going over a speed bump and getting in like a full speed head-on collision, right? So now this broke guy who like thought he was living a hard life before, now he's driving around depressed with his cracked window, and he's forced to go to work at his minimum wage job, and he's driving around in this like beater car now that even it's just like embarrassing, right? And he's just getting pummeled by life because life doesn't stop. It's going to happen to you regardless, right? This is just to reiterate that we are in a battle of survival, and it's always been that way. It's just that this modern society, it does this good job of convincing us that everything is safe and to just kind of go to sleep and Big Brother will take care of you. But that is, as we know, a lie, and it's not going to go that way, right? Life will literally come and conquer you and make you a slave, just like how it happened back in the old days, just like the slaves of the past who were conquered, and if they were lucky, they were enslaved and they got to work the fields instead of being put to death. Only now, Home Depot or Lowe's or McDonald's or whatever it is your new kind of slave owner. And, you might not get whipped, but you are sort of emotionally messed with, and you are beholden to them, and you can quit and you can go and you can find another slave master if you want, but the conditions are largely going to be the same. It's going to be you with no leverage, relying on this big entity to give you some menial work to do that you don't care about, to pay you just enough to continue being a slave, right? All this is, just simply to say that the real solution, I believe, is to wake up each day and treat your life like a war campaign. And it's fun, right? It frames things in a healthy way. It makes you more cunning and ambitious, and it allows you to look at the challenges in front of you, not as these like terrible bouts of misfortune or bad luck, but just obstacles in your conquest towards agency over your life, right? It's what we are wired for. It's more effective to do things that way, and it's much more engaging to look at things through this lens, other than the lens of just like, oh no, life is so unfair and things are just happening and woe is me, right? That's kind of a loser mentality, but it's the mentality that a lot of people have, and it's probably the mentality that maybe even some people will comment about in my comments, because it seems like I get a lot of people watching these videos that want to convince me and want to convince themselves that they are just sort of unable to take life by the balls, and they're just waiting for the whole system to change, and they're waiting for like communism or something to come along and help them out of their bad situation. But I think waiting for the world to come around and fit your needs is a little bit of a bad approach when you could be getting out there and figuring out how to tackle the world head on. If you can bring yourself down into the trenches, and you can kind of let go of that ego, and you can see the fun in the chaos happening around you, the explosions, your boy Billy stuck his head up and you got it blown off right next to you, and now he's gone. Now you don't have anybody to smoke cigarettes and tell jokes to, but you know what? That's just war. That's how it goes, right? If you can see sort of the engagement and like the excitement in this, and you can wake up and you can think like, you can reframe everything. You can wake up and you can think, okay, it's day 8,000 in the war. It's day 800 in the war, right? The enemy, they've sent some vassals. Now they're demanding some money from me, or they're going to start bombing here. And in response, I'm going to do X. And because I'm responding with X, now I must tactically go and do Y and check on Z, because I am like a tactical general in charge of this campaign. Life is advancing on me. It's closing in, it's advancing on my eastern front. So in response, I need to do this and I need to do that, and I need to dig in, I need to ration my food, I need to gather more information about their next offensive move against me, right? You start to think very tactically, and it's empowering. So I hope this is making sense. Like, we all need to kind of step up and take things a bit more seriously. I think for a lot of people, I think it's hard for them to put down the childish things, to put down these sort of like adult pacifiers and kind of start living like a man. But I believe this context of life, it makes things exciting. It's exciting, in the video games, right? Like, it's exciting when you are presented with these challenges to overcome, because you know that it's exciting. It's gonna push you to become a more capable player, and it's going to require a lot more focus from you, and that feels good, right? It feels good, at least for me, it feels good to really like stare down something big that is conquerable, but it takes this intense focus, and it really pushes my brain, and I have to think of all the ways to overcome the challenges in front of me and to thrive. I think that is really what a lot of men are wired for. Once again, I'll say, if you're seeking out content and videos like this, it's probably because you feel some sort of like emptiness, right? I'm sure there's a lot of men out there who are fine to just slave away in the fields, get their little money, come back, spend time with their family. I'm not really saying there's anything wrong with that. Somebody's probably got to do that, and if you just really don't mind and you get out there, you do your thing, you want to come home and just chill or whatever, like, I'm not even really going to say that that's not okay, but I think for a lot of people, they know it's not okay for them. I think a lot of you guys are built for war, and you simply don't realize it. You haven't had the opportunity to really realize it, right? But so many people these days, they're listless, they're unhappy, they're putting all their energy into unproductive things these days. And you see so many people are like into video games, and it's like it's telling me that they want this conquest, they want this challenge. They just don't realize that they can actually get it from life itself. And it's because you're like neutered warriors that you've been sold the lie that there's no war for you to fight. And meanwhile, you found yourself surrounded and you found yourself conquered. So think about that, right? This video is me imploring you to wake up, assess the situation, assess the battlefield around you, to see that the enemy is at your gates, and to begin to fight back like your life depends on it. Because, as cliche as it is to say, there are some cliches out there, but I guess they're cliches for a reason. You need to get up and you need to fight like your life depends on it, because it really does. So that's it for this video, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. It was good talking to you again. This is kind of the stuff that I've been going through in my life lately. Like I posted about in my previous video about just waking up and just trying to like cut out that nonsense time of like waking up and just being on like social media and just wasting time and doing nothing. It's like now I'm really trying these days to kind of wake up and like assess the situation around me and just being like, what can I do each day to improve things? What can I do each day, even if it's just a couple things, off camera, off YouTube or whatever. I've been playing, I got into the Pikmin series in the last year or so, because they came out with the remastered versions for the Switch. So I was playing a little bit of Pikmin, and I think that game just really, those are just amazing games, because they put my head in this space of like, okay, I have like a limited time each day. I need to kind of try to make it count. And it's like, what can I do productive each day? Maybe it's not like I'm moving the earth every single day, but at least I can kind of get up, assess the situation, be like, okay, that part that I need to pick up, or this wall that I need to tear down, I can do like 2 or 3 things today, and that's going to kind of advance my campaign of survival and thriving and stuff. So I've been really approaching life that way myself, and I really implore you guys to do that. Like, just wake up, chill on the social media, and just think about your life. Like, you got some bills overdue, have you got some opportunity to go out there and like make some money and meet people. Like, frame it as like a war campaign, because that gives you kind of the inner power to do things that you would otherwise think are uncomfortable, where you're like, man, I was going to have a day off tomorrow, I was going to jerk off and play video games all day, but now I actually, I got this opportunity to like work a little bit more. And if I work a little bit more, then I'm going to be able to like save up a little bit more money. I can put that money towards something else that might make me more money. You start to engage with the challenges in a more strategic way, in a more thoughtful way, and you start to feel a lot better. And I think you start to feel a lot less of this anxiety. Everybody talks about anxiety, but if you really analyze people's life, they got a million things going wrong. You got the enemy at your gates. It's no wonder that you have anxiety. You've got like all this debt, and you're staring down the barrel of some really bad stuff. You're staring down the barrel of a life of slavery. So it's no wonder you have anxiety. It's not just anxiety from nowhere. I'm going to keep pounding on that. I don't think anxiety just comes from nowhere. I think we need to, once again, wake up, assess the situation, and start to make good decisions, and start to stop the bleeding of all of these bad things that are going on in our life. Stop the wasting of the money, stop the wasting of the attention, start to really focus and fight like you are doing something significant, like you are doing something important. It's your life. You should be attempting to achieve agency and not just be letting it push you around to places you don't really want to go. So that's it for the video, guys. To support me, I got this Patreon going. If any of you guys are really that much in love with me, which I'm hoping you all are, you can support me on Patreon. Right now there's just an option to throw me like $3 a month, and it would be sweet, right? It'd be sweet if I could like start to do this even more, and actually kind of maybe eventually one of these days, if somebody's interested, I could like get somebody to edit the videos to get like better gameplay, more stuff like that. And, just to expand the channel, expand my influence. This is my war campaign. I'm not going to lie. This is something that I want to do to get more financial freedom. So you can support me on Patreon and let me know your thoughts. Please like, subscribe, all that stuff. Leave a comment. And you can follow me on X as well. Link is in the description. So thank you guys so much for listening. It was good to talk to you again. I really enjoyed making this one. And, each day I'm kind of just waking up and I'm kind of trying to do some productive things. And I think the videos that I'm coming out with lately are really things that are pertaining a lot to my own life. And so I'm hoping that they're coming off pretty genuine and pretty important stuff, right? So, all right, guys, that's going to be it. I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.